I'm just sick of evil people. I just there's nothing I can do. Every single opportunity I have to live somewhere, and it's with someone evil. It's just it's like that's just the outcome, and it doesn't matter what I do. And the opportunity that came up with this other guy, his couple of kids, like, I was so exhausted, I was so tired, and it came up on a day that it wasn't yesterday, it was the day before, when I had just made that decision. This is it. I'm done. I'm fucking done. And I've gone back to the killing the kidney idea, but more actively. There is no plausible, possible reason. You'd have to be fucking insane to tell me to hang on, that life's going to get better. This is my life. It's just on a rotation of fucking evil people promising me housing, signing up, or otherwise contracting to house me doing nothing wrong, and them turning out to be not just unreliable, but fucking evil. And I've made it clear, my mother has been the common thread through almost all of my misfortune. And this didn't happen to me all my life. This didn't happen to me all my life. This happened to me after a specific event happened with my mother. And what I used to think was paranoia, or I knew wasn't paranoia, but I didn't think anyone would believe me that it wasn't, I now know is absolute classic, what they call narcissistic smear campaigns. I believe she's been lent money in the family. As far as I know, I don't know what to trust, what she says. But she won't lend it to me outright. She will only pay people. So she always has a connection to wherever I go. And I'm not saying she's responsible for everything that's gone wrong in my life. People have misfortunes that are just part of life, People have terrible runs of bad luck. But my life has been cursed, and there are no such things as curses. And I had ups and downs, and I've had people telling me that I've had a very hard life. And I'd been quite surprised because I didn't think I had. And they would tell me this and this and this and this and this. And sometimes I would say, oh yeah. And the other times I go, oh, not really. Like my kidneys failing, a lot of people saw that as being a really, really awful life event. Which is totally fair enough, because for a lot of people with kidney failure, it is a really awful life event. And I'm not minimising what those people go through. The younger woman who, she had quite a lot of health problems. I think she had something like multiple sclerosis, or she had some terrible disease anyway, and I think her kidney failure, it was her second transplant, and her kidney failure, I think, was secondary to the illness or something, whatever it was. I mean, she didn't have great prospects anyway, but they put us in the same room, and my kidney was working before they stitched me up. My kidney was like, what were the other ones doing, man? Let's get this place cleared up. Like a fucking OCD person on fucking meth. That was my kidney. My kidney was fucking just fucking destroying every fucking electrolyte in my body. You know, pumping out the excess fluid, like before they even stitched me up. It was just like, fuck, man, stop mucking around. What are people doing? Fucking get up and do something. Like, they hadn't even stitched me up, whereas other people had, a lot. It would be very common for people to remain on dialysis for a while after a kidney transplant. Well, they get used to each other. But me and my kidney were just like, my kidney was just like, I'm fucking taking out the trash, man. And it was just fucking incredible. Like, when you have kidneys failing, and it's less so when you're on peritoneal dialysis, and more so on hemodialysis. But pros and cons. But on peritoneal dialysis, which is what I was, when you have a fluid exchange rather than a blood circulating and being cleaned. You don't have to watch your diet so much, but potassium's like a really big one, and phosphate to it. It's as serious level, but not as urgent. Like, too much potassium and you can just die of a heart attack. But those electrolytes and stuff that you need your kidney to just get rid of, so it doesn't build up in your body and kill you, or slowly or quickly or whatever. I had to take supplements of those things that I was on dietary restrictions of. I was never on a dietary restriction. I was never on a fluid intake restriction. I never stopped peeing. But nonetheless, my kidney was dehydrating me. It was just like, because what kidneys do, they do all sorts of things, and one of the things is like dialysis is not a kidney replacement. A lot of people still have to be on fluid restrictions, which is horrible. I drink a lot of, I've always been a very high fluid intake person. But my kidney was just like throwing water out of myself. My kidney was trying to turn me into a raisin. It was just fucking incredible. Whereas the chick next to me, her kidney failed almost immediately. And it didn't just fail, it was like, she was like screaming in fucking agony. Like, I don't know what the fuck was going on. I don't have the medical training. I don't know what on earth happened. And there was a lot of drama, and her mother was really upset, really angry. She was quite a nice woman, but if I talk about survivor's guilt, like, and it's unusual, I think, to remove you don't usually remove failed kidneys, native kidneys. It'd be very unusual to do that. It would be if there had been some sort of injury or something. Very unusual to remove native kidneys, because I've got 3, really. I say I have 1, but I've got 3. 2 on the back, 1 on the front. And I don't know what happens when a graft kidney fails. I suppose if you have a second graft kidney in your lifetime, which would not be unheard of at all, if you're lucky enough to get 2, I don't suppose they'll just keep piling the kidneys up. I guess they would remove the previous graft, but I think if a graft had failed, I think they'd probably just leave it there. The less surgery, the better. If it's not doing any harm, then just leave it in there. but she had to go into surgery, and it was a real drama. It was like it was like medical. It was like Grey's Anatomy or something. It was a real medical drama, and it was fucking horrifying, man. Obviously, that's not a normal experience. I mean, neither of us had a normal experience, but, you know, a lot of people were really, really sick leading up to end stage. An end stage kidney failure doesn't mean the same thing that end stage means for a lot of organ failures or illnesses. It just means that the kidneys reached the end of its, you know, it's basically reached the end of its function. And luckily, you know, there are people with, you know, who are waiting for a heart graft who don't get one. There's not a dialysis for hearts. I mean, you can do sort of bypass and stuff, but I don't know. I mean, there's so many things that go wrong with a heart. And yeah, people felt really sorry for me, but the only thing that was difficult for me was that I kept getting anemic because one thing your kidney does is it produces the erythropoietin. Erythropoietin's created in the kidneys, I think, and that's one of the ingredients of blood, or it's actually extremely complicated. It's, anemia, you think it has all these different causes. Well, I mean, you don't. You think it's just iron deficiency. Then you get to know a bit more about anemia, and then you think, oh, it's got a few different causes. And then you actually look at anemia and you're like, right, so actually all the causes of anemia are more like a family tree. You know, and they all happen at different times, and like sickle cell anemia. Occurs at a completely different point. I mean, it is when the blood cells, well, some blood cells come out as blasts, you know, the little baby ones in a funny shape, and often they're too big and stuff like that. Anyway, here's me rambling, but I feel like that's okay. But my anemia was pretty straightforward. I just, you know, I had plenty of iron. I just wasn't using it because you needed erythropoietin, basically. It's like having a kitchen and ingredients but no chef. I didn't have a chef, basically. So no one was making my erythropoietin into oxygen transporting. I just want to say paraphernalia because that's not the right word, but I'm tired. But yeah, anyway, that's one of the things, like, it's funny to call it doping, but, you know, that's what Lance Armstrong was using, injecting erythropoietin. I would inject it too. That's how you do it. You inject it subcutaneously with a tiny needle. But it takes about 6 weeks for it to start producing, or, you know, start contributing to the production of the blood cells, and so it would just get out of control sometimes, and people wouldn't be looking at my blood test results and again anemic. But mostly I was asymptomatic. I didn't get, mostly asymptomatic, and I was told by one of the kind of senior nurses involved at a particular level, of the process. She said, yeah, sometimes people are asymptomatic, so I was never laid up. Yeah. And so I would have to sort of reject a lot of sympathy when people will say, yeah, I'd had a hard life. And I think I do. I think looking back now, I understand more why people said that. I think people could see things that I couldn't see, that I just never had any fucking chance. Just a bit of a hopeless character, really. And I only really realised that when I was I just noticed that I was just sliding downhill and things went, like my optimism, like my dad would call it, he would say that I was rationalising, but I didn't think I was rationalising. I thought I was being optimistic, and maybe I was rationalising, but what neither of us knew was that I had ADHD, and what looked like a lack of effort or follow through was not. And I had a massive breakdown, a massive, huge, full-scale breakdown. When I suddenly saw what my life was. And then I got my ADHD diagnosis not long after that because I was so sure. I was so sure it was that. The more I learned, I was just, and it had been suggested to me, and I qualified, I met the, what do they call, like the, whatever, qualifying criteria. That's how they put it when they diagnose you. Something like that. You meet the whatever. But even more than that, the screening that they do at the same time. They do ASD screenings, autism screenings, and because they're often comorbid and also can be confused for each other. I got way over the threshold for that. And I was like, well, I can't afford assessment, and there's no treatment. Not really. There's some sort of antipsychotic you can use off-label for like elements of it, but it really just is what it is. And at the time that I started benefiting from the diagnosis, which was mostly because it led to treatment, which was staggeringly life-changing, I just slipped on that. I slipped on the banana skin. Now I just wear banana skin shoes. And it's been 2.5 years, and it's getting worse and worse and worse, and the longer it goes on, the less I am able to explain to anybody, and nobody understands that people who have gone through a very long period of trauma cannot sum it up in a couple of paragraphs. And the ideas that I would get counselling are ridiculous. Counsellors, it's like giving someone a counsellor or a regular psychotherapist when they've got trauma is like giving someone chemotherapy when they've got AIDS. You know, it's not better than nothing. And people say, well, some help's better than no help. It's like, yes, but it's not help, it's harm. It's like, no matter, it's not negativity, it's fucking living in reality and trying and trying and trying. And all I'm managing to do is to just scrape my knuckles raw, climbing a hill of rocks just to slow my slide down. With people throwing rocks at me from the top. And I'm starting to hate people who tell me to hold on and be resilient. I'm starting to hate those people. I can't even imagine what someone else would do in my situation. I don't know what people do. But there are a lot of suicides in this country, and to me there's a direct line between my experiences of the medico-social system as it is provided by the government and NGOs and charities, and I mean it's all really just the same thing. In terms of the attitudes and the training and the capacities to understand and the qualifying criteria, more gaps than slings, and I don't think I'm unique at all. I think this is a very standard experience that I'm having, and there's nothing you can do. And the same old suggestions, like I've quipped before, but it's a pretty wry quip that it's worth dying just to escape the same old fucking ideas suggested It's amazing how many people think the health and disability advocacy service, I mean, I can understand that if they just know the name, but it's that people think they know more than I do about, it's like the patronising, it's like, it's okay if someone thinks they know as much as I do, but everybody thinks that I know nothing, and they actually know nothing. It's amazing how many people think the health and disability advocacy service is for people with health and disability problems who need help connecting to services. It's not. It's purely to help you to complain to the Health and Disability Commission. It's not in the name, but I would rather people did their fucking research before bashing me over the head, and they usually use these pieces of advice to bash me over the head with. I've been bashed over the head by a lot of people who think that I'm just not making an effort, and it's like I've gone absolutely everywhere. And I'd say a good half of the people who work in these social services, broadly socio-medical services, don't care. And they can seem awfully lovely, but something that I've had to learn the hard way and really focus on continuing to learn is that you never, and this is a really, really good piece of advice. It's a really good piece of advice, and most of the, I mean, I get advice wherever I can. I pick up things from everywhere. But a fair chunk of it is just stuff from bitter experience, that is mine to pass on to others. And one of those things, and I haven't found a perfect way to characterise it, but I found a pretty good way. It's not fail-safe, and I'll say why, but it's this. You don't know what a person is like until their interests are challenged. And by what they're like, I mean whether they're, in general terms, good or bad people. And I'm comfortable using the terms good and bad, and I'm comfortable using a binary just for the purposes of this example, even though I know good and bad aren't in binaries. I think it's fine just for this level of discussion. But the reason that my wording isn't perfect is that people's legitimate interests can be challenged, and their reaction to having their legitimate interests unfairly challenged, that's when abusers leverage the reaction to make you look like you're the problem, which is very famous, and it's called Darvo. A lot of people call it gaslighting. I guess it can be gaslighting, but that's not what gaslighting is. And it's funny how it's used almost exclusively in the wrong way. But I suppose I can add some complexity and say you don't know if someone's good or bad until their interests are legitimately challenged. And those interests usually have something to do with their self-image or the effort that they need to expend. And generally people react like a cut snake all of a sudden when you give negative feedback about their performance, when their performance has objectively and obviously not met the standards that have been mandated and agreed. That's when someone nice at Comcare turns into, well, they don't turn into one. You see what they are. They're a narcissist. Yeah. And there's a very nasty female there who is just like that. And it's devastating because you put so much weight on, oh my God, they promise you so much. I'm not talking about just Comcare, I'm just talking about whatever, whomever. It's just like, oh my God, I found someone. And I keep doing that over and over and over again, like Groundhog Day. And then you get people who go, just accept what's on offer, like, don't complain. And it's like, I don't think you quite understand what it is that I'm complaining about. It's actually an intractable problem. I'm not nitpicking. I'm talking about something that's absolutely fundamental to the service that they're supposed to provide. And a really good example of the problem I keep coming up against is a lot of these places are either specifically for people with disabilities, including mine. I still don't like saying disabilities. I still don't like it because I just still think of that purple head screeching fucking, whatever. But I'm sorry, disabilities exist, and they just do. They just do, and I'm sorry I have disabilities. There's a horrible, I hate the connotation of disability. I just don't like the word at all. But there's no better descriptor. It's like you can use a different, you can kind of conjugate it or use it in a, just use it in different grammatical sense. It's like these are things that I am unable, these things prevent me from doing things that are normal to do. That's a disability. No. And what's very common for people with disabilities, especially when they involve, the neurocognitive system, for whatever reason, is that communication is a challenge, and people don't think I have communication problems because they scoff at it because I'm I guess I'm eloquent. I don't know if eloquent's quite the right word, but I've got an excellent command of English, and I'm very good at expressing myself, and I am very much in touch with my emotions. As trauma deepens, it becomes harder because you get dissociation, which I finally think I understand the meaning of. When you just start disconnecting and floating away, which I think is what happens to kids, when they get abused. I think they go into their, they go somewhere else, you know. I think that's dissociation. I think I do something, I think it's something similar. It's not that I go anywhere else, it's just that it's not that I'm numb even, it's just that I'm not really experiencing emotions. I guess it's just a way to just, you know, it's just an analgesic. So it's not a negative thing, it's just, yeah, it's just like disconnecting a beeping thing, you know. I don't need to feel this, I got the picture, I'm in strife, I don't need to feel this, I just need to plough ahead. It's better than freezing. But I've been criticised by so many people for saying that I have communication difficulties. It's not that I have difficulty expressing myself necessarily, although I do when it comes to trying to give a potted history of all the things that have happened to me. Like, that's not. And then my memory, like, I'm actually cognitively damaged, you know. And there's all sorts of things like, you know, ADHD does that, trauma does that, and yet people just get so angry at me when they're like, well, I just want to have a quick chat. It's like, but I can't do a quick chat. That's the hardest thing to do. And it's like, where do I fit into my own treatment? Do I fit into my own treatment anywhere? And I don't. And that's not a small complaint. And you can't get back up. I used to say quite often, and I've come back and said it a bit more because, you know, I gave up on finding an advocate, and then sort of things resurged a bit, especially with the justice system stuff. So if I can't get an advocate without an advocate. I need to get someone on board first who can then advocate for me. I need to get an advocate to advocate for me. 2 advocates. It's like there's got to be some communication in between. It's not happening. It's not happening. Yeah, I have to say, like, there have been past times where I have been very prepared and willing to kill myself, but like with the first time when I actively tried to do it by taking what I thought was a fatal cocktail, not as an overdose as interactions. So the first active time, rather than just, the passive way I was trying before. I didn't do it the night I'd planned, and I have these photos still of the night I'd planned, and I'd gone out for a walk and taken photos, and I just commemorated the event, and it was summer, it was January, and I'd put my inflatable king single bed out on my balcony, Springfield Road, and I'd made it really nicely. And I was going to stay out there and watch the sunset. And that grimace was just the pain of losing my home there, which I eventually did. But a long time after that attempt. And I couldn't do it that night because I was so tired. Because being harassed and hounded and chased from pillar to post like a fox, and a fox hunt is really tiring, and when you get a chance to just rest, and when you allow yourself to rest, because that can be very difficult too when you're living in survival mode, almost impossible sometimes. And when you decide to die, then you have permission to rest because you don't have to do anything anymore. And I didn't die that night. I didn't die anyway, but I didn't try to die that night because I was like, oh, it's so nice just lying down on my bed and I just want to sleep. Because I don't think death is like sleeping. You don't have the paraphernalia for sleeping. You're not there. It's not a big sleep. I don't know what it is. I've lost my religion to an extent, you know. I'm not sure anymore. Just because I learned my religion, mostly from my dad, and he's gone now, and since he's gone, I'm not saying it's a causative link, but certainly, you know, in the years after he's died, several years passed, I suppose, before I started learning how unreliable people were and how much bullshit adults spoke. And I can't say that what he believed to be true had any more evidence attached to it than what anybody else says is true. And it was not a very nice experience for me when I was seeking comfort from, you know, Gurinder Singh through my one, you know, mounted picture of him from like the 90s. And I intuitively, like it's still woven all through me, a belief in karma and reincarnation. And, you know, non-violence and living a clean life. And I mean, you know, you can live those principles without having any belief in any sort of afterlife or deity or anything like that. But I found myself also really just wishing that there's nothing after. I just, and I'm finding myself, it used to be that I thought I was not afraid of being dead, but I was afraid of dying. And I'm certainly afraid of dying. I think the moment, you know, if there's a moment of realisation that it's happening, I think that must be fucking awful. Which is why I've always, well, you know, when it's been available to me, taken sedatives or sleeping pills just to, you know, take that feeling of shock, because it's a shock. It's a real shock in the chest. It's like really big. It's like a really big fright. And that's why people, fucking idiots, think that I've overdosed on benzos or sleeping pills, and I haven't. I've just taken a bit of extra padding, you know. I'd often still leave some behind, you know. Thank goodness, because when it doesn't work, you know, it's like, it's not very nice being without them. Yeah, it's not very nice surviving a I think one of the saddest things is surviving a suicide attempt and nobody knows. And you're just sick in bed for a few days. And people are still horrible to you. And yeah, I'm afraid of dying. I'm very afraid of not dying. I don't know what happens afterwards. I think the whole thing would be less frightening if I just knew that one thing was reliable, was that if I do this, I will die. That would really help a lot, because you've got so many other things to worry about. It's just one of the most miserable things, is worrying about not digging a deep enough grave for yourself, you know. It's like, I just feel like the one kindest thing someone could do for me would be to kill me. And it just takes such a weight off me. It would just feel like the most loving thing that anybody could do. And I remember seeing in a movie a scene that really made that so profound for me. And I don't know what it was. I first thought it might have been a zombie movie, you know, maybe one of the more, well, obviously one of the least schlocky ones, and when they started making sort of quite serious ones, like 28 Days After, which were very serious movies, you know. And, you know, when someone was turning and they hadn't turned, but they were going to, and they were still very much human, but they had to be killed before they turned. Because like a lot of zombie movies, you know, they will wait till the last minute till the zombie to, you know, till the turns, and it never works out very well. And it might not have been that. It might have been a more serious situation where someone was, it could have been like one of those awful situations where, someone's out stranded in the middle of the fucking desert or something and is mortally wounded or whatever, and there's no medical help, there's some sort of situation like that, and it might have even been lost. It might have been like, what's his name? Matthew Fox's character. Oh, it might have been, yeah, with that blonde chick, and they didn't have enough morphine or something. Anyway, whatever it was just like there was somebody who had to do the loving act of euthanizing another human being. And it was someone who was emotionally connected to the person they had to kill. And that's why they did it. That's what made it so comforting for the person who had to be killed. I've had 3 people offer to help me. One was said very spitefully, and it was Mitchell. One of them was said very kindly, but totally falsely by Lauren. And then one was said by somebody else. And it was not that he was offering to kill me, but he was offering to help me problem solve. Which was flabbergasting. And extremely, extremely dangerous. He was not from this country and he was a lot younger. And it never went anywhere. But it was just a staggeringly just believing, having it put on the table by somebody who was trying to help me and who wanted me to stay alive, but understood that, or trusted that I knew what I was talking about when I said I couldn't. For them to put that on the table as something that they might be able to help me with, to problem solve, was just, it was just one of the most marvellous things I'd heard. And again, I just find myself in a situation where I just want more time. Like, John's just stolen time from me. It was more or less true that I intended to die here, or while I was here, in the 2 weeks that he gave me. That is true, really. I didn't tell him that. When I talked about another solution, there's not, I said you've taken a week away from me to find another option, another solution. He said, what do you mean? It's like, what the fuck do you think I mean? You gave me 2 weeks here, and now, because you said I could stay on pretty much till I found somewhere else, which obviously a very different scenario, and that you've gone back on that, sort of 2/5, 4/7 the way through, 3/7 of the way through. Yeah, you basically left me with a week, and a bit. And, having 2 weeks where I was at least feeling welcome and, that's pretty much what I was gonna do once I got the hard yakka out of the way. And there was a lot of hard yakka. I had to do a lot of work involving storage units and stuff. Just basically being chased away from everywhere, but having possessions and no car and bad health and all of that stuff, and commitments that I wanted to wrap up with people, and and then I would have had this 10-day period to be invalid in freezing cold house, but I've got my own phone pin heater and my internet here, and sun streaming in the morning, and enough water, and now it's this horrible fucking nightmare where once again I've just got an evil person hating me. And recruiting others to hate me too. And nobody at all to help me, except my mother, whose help is always a trap or some sort of breadcrumb she's throwing on the ground to set to set an alternative narrative, giving horribly abusive advice that the average fucking pompous idiot would interpret or insist on interpreting as benevolent, such as the fact that she said she did an about face like John did, and I doubt they're unconnected, where she said, this is not a suitable place for me to live, it's not up to my usual standards, of housing, which for the average pompous idiot, as I say, sounds fine, except my alternative isn't my usual standard of living. My alternative is the street, in already increasingly overnight temperatures of 0 and under in May. Like, it's not even gaslighting. It's, the purpose is not to make me believe anything. The purpose is to lay down a track, a different track than reality that she can point to. I'm not giving that as an example of how, because it doesn't help me at all, but she's, done things to help me, like sorted out money and stuff. And, made other efforts for me that I don't really know what the efforts are behind the scenes, to be honest. I only know her side of them. But I have nobody. And I have people online and a couple of nice people. I guess I've met in backpackers. I mean, one, person. And I guess it's okay to say that that's Miriam. But these are not relationships that can take my weight. And I don't know what I get out of. I mean, I have a lot of sort of groups on Facebook for different reasons, and the ones with about loneliness, or because I am lonely. I'm lonely in I don't want company. It's not that I want company. And I can't stand it when people pressure me to talk, so it would make you feel a lot better. Like, I've had to block people and just go, fuck that shit. Like, don't you fucking tell me what I fucking need. You've known me for 2 minutes. Talking's the worst bit. Like, no, it won't make me feel better to share my problem. Sharing my problem is a huge job. Like, why don't you ask me to paint the Sistine Chapel? That's how much talking will help. And company, like the kind of company that you just sort of ambiently get in a backpackers before things turn sour, is nice. But I'm not lonely for company. I'm lonely for solidarity, or at least understanding. And I don't want to talk to anybody unless it were a trauma-informed therapist and I was in a safe place that I could be for a long time and I was protected. That's the only situation that I'd want to talk to anybody. But it's just like I may as well book a fucking shuttle to space, as far as realistic plans go. So I don't really know what to do. I'm not going to take John to the disputes tribunal. I've got more important things to do. I'm not wasting my time on trash. But I wanted to get that stuff out there, and I guess I just have an opportunity just to sit and, say my, do my confession booth thing. Not a confession, but, to say where I'm at. And yeah, I wish I felt a bit safer and a bit more secure and secluded. I don't know if I've put John off. I mean, he's pretty dumb. He's pretty stupid. He honestly thinks that because he's told his side of the story to the information line at the disputes tribunal, and they've told him that based on what he's told them that he's in the clear, he genuinely seems to think that I don't have any traction. Like, I think he's one of those, I don't know if he is a psychopath, but he's definitely a narcissist. And I think he's one of those narcissists who genuinely, like, there are those that, what are they called there? Like, they're just fucking Eeyores, and I've known a few of those, so, they just think that they have it worse than everybody else, and they're just really self-pitying. And they're not arrogant or anything, but they do, like, hold others in very low, they have a low opinion of other people, and they do tend to get their sort of sympathisers. I had an ex-boyfriend like that, and yeah, it's so before you really learn about the different kinds of narcissism, what the core of narcissism is, it's not excessive self-love, it's excessive self-regard, but the regard is more about just this focus on yourself and your own interests and your own needs and your own. And your own may be a sense of victimhood that's out of proportion to reality, People who just mind-bogglingly believe that they have really shitty lives when they really, really don't. And I'm not saying that people can't have nightmarish inner experiences that they can't help. When they actually have extremely good fortune, but they see their fortune as worse than others. I'm speaking on objective terms here, not from people on the outside looking in and not seeing the reality and saying, like, they just distort the reality. They're narcissists, that's what narcissists do, they distort reality. And I think John believes his own bullshit. I do. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if he has successfully lied to himself to think that he offered me a home here because he felt sorry for me or responsible for me because I said I was suicidal. I would not be surprised if he actually thinks that. Like, he's, persuaded himself of that. He's a very self-pitying person. And I don't know, but he's evil. He's an evil person. Where is that? Where is that sense of duress now? It's illogical. He can't have it. He can't have it both ways. It's a mutually. It's a self-destroying claim. Well, no, it's not quite self-destroying. But it's close to it. I just... God, I felt so sick for the first few days when I just let myself sit in bed. I felt so sick, but it was so nice. It was so nice, especially when John brought the divan in for me. Because he brought it in for me because I was going to be his tenant of one sort or another, you know. I was going to live here, that's why he put the bed in. It was okay on the floor with the foam padding, but it was just so much, it was just so lovely being in the bed, and I've got my duvet all stuffed with all the things that I had draped all over it, like the duvet and I've got blankets and everything with those layers because it's very cold. It's very cold. It's a cold house. I wake up in the morning quite cold through this, very thick, you know, and I'm a night sweater. You know, like I get overheated at night, but I don't here. But I don't much leave the heater on overnight. I really don't trust those power points. The power's pretty, electricity, so I don't think I think the place needs to be rewired. Whatever. It was just so nice, and I was just lying here, and I was just being an invalid. And I really, really was, like, I really could barely get out of bed, and I didn't need to, and it wasn't miserable. It was like, finally, I get to be the person who receives supported living payments for serious long-term illness with no work capacity. I finally, for the first time since my diagnosis a year and a bit ago, get to be that person. I don't think I have that much more to say. It is Friday night. I assume if John is stupid enough to try to get rid of me on Tuesday, then I have till probably up to lunchtime on Tuesday, and oh yeah, going back to, so I knew that I hadn't told John that I was planning to die. I knew I hadn't, because I was making quite I had a problem I had another problem to solve, you see, which was how to die while being here but not literally being here. And it involved probably moving most of my stuff into storage. And I was a little bit worried about how to do that because I would have, at that stage, I anticipated at that stage being very unwell. Because, I would be dying. But not before I was done with it. And I had been going to take all the extra stuff that I had to bring out to sort through from Dyer's Road here. I had been going to take all of that back to, or take it to Storage King. Whatever I was going to do, I did not want to get John into any trouble. I didn't want, what I was going to do, I was I'm probably just going to have to go out and die of hypothermia. And I thought there'd probably be a reasonably good chance of that. And so one of the things I had that, earmarked was I'm going to keep an eye on the weather app and maybe go somewhere a bit more reliable, like Niwa or something, for the forecast. It's actually been reasonably warm lately, so, not much of a chance. But that -6 night, which was my second night here, I think, fuck John, I could have died that night. And as I was saying to Wendy, my mother, hypothermia, you don't really suffer from cold. Fairly quickly you start to feel too hot. I don't think that would feel very nice either, but I think it'd be better than feeling too cold. I hate being too cold. Humans don't like it, and it's awful to think about how many people are out there tonight. And as I'd said to John, I was grateful for that not being here that night, because I said I'll bet there were many deaths that occurred on the street that night. There would have had to have been inside as well. There would have been poor people, sick people, old people who died inside of hypothermia on that night, no doubt. I feel like it must be one of those things that happens a lot but is just not reported. Yeah, but I was sort of having to think, what do I do there? And I'd still want shelter and a blanket and stuff, and a pillow. I still want to be comfortable. So I'd bring my tent, and I was thinking I'd go to Aberley Park and I'd set up a little thing, and I'd just go there and crawl like a cat under a tree to die. And I wouldn't leave things here because I didn't want. I honestly thought John was just a really good guy, and I didn't want to get him into any sort of trouble. I didn't want to leave any sign of someone having been here under what could be construed as his responsibility. That was something I was really trying to solve. There's no fucking way. I knew going through those text messages tonight, filming them for an hour and writing those little notes as I went. On Facebook, I knew, nah man, there was no point that I said I was suicidal. The only point that it ever came up was when I just to verify, because I felt that I didn't give him enough to trust me. I just wanted to give him a few points where he could actually just touch external reality, verified reality. And medical notes are pretty good as that. And just say, look, I'm not faking, I'm not trying to get sympathy, but it was my diagnosis. And one of those diagnoses was suicidality, and it's just there. It's like it's on a medical certificate. It's not a threat to him or an intention in a particular moment of time. It's just there, and he didn't read it, or if he did, he never mentioned it. Like, there was no cause and effect. So yeah, I don't know what he's going to do. Like, I've pulled quite a few triggers tonight with John. He might do something like he might pull a welfare check trick. One of those fucking doozies. Which is why I said, if you do anything to threaten me, I'm fucking out. Which is why I pretty much think I've got to get on with it. And I'm going to pace myself. On Tuesday, I want to be very sick. The lowest I'm aiming is not caring what happens to me. And something I wanted to do a while ago was to get in touch with Public Trust and get an enduring power of attorney for like my health and stuff. Like, do not resuscitate, or like, hospitals don't know the law. It'd be very, very, very difficult to get someone to not to obey, get anyone to obey that. Like, it's very, very hard to get hospitals and so forth to understand the fact that we're allowed to refuse medical treatment. You're even allowed to go into a birthing suite and not have any medical attention. Like, I had an argument with someone about that, but I was wrong. You can go into a birthing suite and refuse any assistance. You can. I don't know how much legal standing duty of care has. I don't think it has enough standing against someone's personal choice about whether or not to receive medical care. I don't think it does. I think I might write DNR on my chest or something like that. Yeah, I wanted to get some advanced directives underway, but it's like, for fuck's sake, there's so much to fucking do. If I somehow end up in hospital on dialysis, fine, they have to release me at some point. And I'm not going to do dialysis, so yeah, I guess I'll just upload this now.